Hi, my name is Ardelia, and my son cropped me out of his wedding portrait. Not by accident, intentionally, cleanly, like I was never there to begin with. His wife? She smiled and said, "You never belonged." But that was just the start. The photos? I was erased. The speeches? I was invisible. And the house they used for the wedding? The one I paid for, had been transferred out of my name without me knowing. They told their version of the story. But now, it's time I tell mine. What would you do if your own child rewrote your legacy and handed it to someone else? Would you stay silent or send them the bill? They didn't send a car. I didn't expect one. I stood at the edge of the gravel drive, my low heels sinking slightly into the soft soil. The coastal breeze toyed with the edge of my silk scarf as I looked up at the sprawling venue, a Spanish-style estate perched just beyond the cliffs of Santa Barbara. Valora always did have a taste for the photogenic. The valet gave me a polite, vacant smile, like I was one of the vendors arriving late. I handed him my keys with the kind of composure that comes only after decades of swallowing things whole. Disappointment, pride, love. Inside, the air was cooled unnaturally, carrying the faint scent of roses and catered opulence. I moved slowly through the foyer, heels clicking, the only soundtrack to my entrance. No one noticed. Or if they did, they were well trained not to flinch. Then I saw it. The photo. Framed in gold, mounted high above the welcome table, it was the centerpiece of the hallway. A massive, professionally staged portrait. Everyone was there. Valora's mother, father, two sisters, the bridesmaids, even Thatcher's college roommate, the one who drank too much and danced too little. And my son, standing tall in a tailored suit, his arm around Valora, who glowed like she'd walked out of a magazine spread. And I was nowhere. Not cropped awkwardly, not faded into the background, just removed. Cleanly, as if someone had gone in with digital scissors and erased me from the frame entirely. My mouth stayed shut, my stomach did not. It nodded, pulled inward. But I didn't cry, I didn't gasp. I took a step back, adjusted my scarf, and whispered to myself, "Interesting." The kind of interesting that means war. Further down the hallway, a voice called out, "Family of the groom!" The photographer stood beside a velvet backdrop, waving people in. Valora's eyes locked on mine for half a beat. She smiled, adjusted her dress, and glided forward, like a swan skimming glass. Her heel landed right where I was about to step. "Oh," she said sweetly, brushing non-existent lint from her gown. "We're just keeping the aesthetic clean." Laughter rippled from behind me. Guests chuckled, thinking she was charming, that it was a joke. I nodded, stepped back, and let her pass. My spine stayed straight, my lips sealed. Aesthetic. Like I was clutter. I drifted away from the crowd, through a side door, out into the garden where the sounds of celebration dulled. A bench sat beneath a jacaranda tree, its blossoms staining the grass like bruised petals. I sank into the wood slowly, smoothing my dress, fingers trembling, but not from cold. I pulled out my phone, no missed calls, no new texts. I scrolled back, months, then years. The last message from Thatcher that felt like love was dated 2019. A voice memo popped up. I tapped it. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to say I love you. You always show up, and I don't say it enough. I'm lucky to have you." I paused it halfway. That voice was a ghost. My eyes drifted to the window above the garden wall. Through it, I could see into the reception hall. Velvet-draped tables, champagne towers, laughter. Valora twirling in her dress, Thatcher by her side, laughing like he hadn't just buried me in pixels. They looked like the perfect couple in the perfect scene, surrounded by a carefully curated circle of witnesses. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was something colder. Still, you started this story without me in it. Let's see how it ends. It wasn't just the photo. It wasn't even just the comment about aesthetic. Something deeper had shifted. Something that had been brewing long before tonight, long before the guest list, the color scheme, or the curated moments. I stood in the shadow of a corridor off the main reception hall, a glass of Chardonnay in my hand. I hadn't sipped it, just held it. Like a prop in a play I no longer understood the script to. The lighting was dim, soft enough to hide the tremor in my fingers. I leaned gently against the wall, back straight, jaw set. They hadn't included me in the photo, that much was clear. But what gnawed at me wasn't just the exclusion, it was how easy it had become for them to exclude me. When did it start? Maybe when Thatcher turned 25 and started calling me Ma instead of Mom, like I was some elderly figure he'd outgrown. Or maybe it was when Valora entered the picture with her polished manners and silent eyes that always scanned a room like she was assessing ROI. After his father left, I held everything together with one paycheck and a smile. I worked overtime during flu season, cooked dinner during tax season, and never once forgot his football games. I remembered birthdays even when we had to celebrate with cake from the day-old rack and paper plates. There was a time when he wouldn't sleep without hearing my voice. A photographer's voice broke through the hum of clinking glassware and murmurs, "We're gathering family near the front arch." Family. That word again. I stepped toward the arch instinctively, not expecting applause or fanfare, just the basic decency of inclusion. My heels echoed lightly on the tile as I neared the group. Before I could say anything, Thatcher turned toward me. His eyes flicked from my face to Valora's. Then, without a word, he wrapped his arm tighter around her waist and turned the both of them away, moving toward the center of the shot. I stood there, still, forgotten, unnecessary. No one looked back. No one said, "Mom, come join us." The photographer snapped the picture. Someone behind me cleared their throat, waiting to step past. I gave a small nod and walked away, slowly enough to keep my dignity, fast enough to escape the burn rising behind my eyes. Dinner was being served. I slipped into the reception hall and made my way to my assigned seat. It was near the back, close to the speakers, where the bass buzzed through my chest. A woman in a sequined dress leaned over to the man beside her and asked, "Is that the groom's aunt?" "No," he replied. "She must be someone from catering." I smiled. Quietly. I'd learned a long time ago that smiling buys time. Time to steel yourself, to store the damage in a place no one can access. Later that night, after the first dance and a round of overly long toasts, I stepped outside. The sky had deepened into velvet, stars flickering through a haze of floral-scented air. I sat on a low stone bench and took out my phone. My finger hesitated before tapping an old voicemail. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to say I love you. You always show up, and I don't say it enough. I'm lucky to have you." That voice felt like a relic now, something from another life, one where my presence was not only expected, but needed. My thumb hovered over the delete button. I didn't press it. Inside, I heard laughter, sharp, melodic. Valora's, followed by Thatcher's deeper echo. I looked through the glass window, catching a glimpse of them, arms intertwined, framed by fairy lights. They looked like they had everything: style, support, a carefully arranged narrative, one that no longer needed me. Maybe they thought they could crop me out of their lives, the same way they had cropped me out of that picture. Neatly, cleanly. But stories aren't that tidy. If they want to erase me, let's see how clean they can keep their slate when the truth bleeds through. It didn't take long after the bouquet toss and polite applause for them to dim the lights and play the thank you video. A hush settled over the reception hall as faces lit up on the big screen, starting with a slow pan across beachside engagements, puppy kisses, and two perfect smiles posed under a floral arch. Valora's voice floated over it all. Too polished, too perfect. "I just want to thank my amazing in-laws for welcoming me like a daughter. My rock, my dad, who taught me how to be strong, and of course, the woman who made me who I am. Mom, I love you." The image on screen cut to Valora and her mother, locked in an embrace. Then another. Thatcher laughing with her family over brunch. The background music swelled. Not one frame of me. Not even the back of my head. My hands rested in my lap. I didn't fidget. I didn't shift in my seat. I just breathed, slow, deep, steady, as if I were holding my body together with sheer will. The room applauded, soft and sweet, full of sentiment they thought had been universally shared. I didn't clap. I turned my attention to my phone. It buzzed against my clutch. An alert from Instagram. Valora had already posted highlights from the night. I opened the reel. Their first kiss. The ring slide. Champagne tower clinks. Group photos. Family photos. No me. Slide after slide. It was as if the space I'd occupied had been surgically removed. When I reached a group picture from earlier, where I knew I had stood at the end, my side had been cropped tight, cutting off even the edge of my shawl. A comment caught my eye. "Where's Thatcher's mom? She's so lovely." The comment was gone 30 seconds later. I closed the app. There's erasure, and then there's deliberate deletion. I wasn't just absent. I had been edited out like a blemish. Like clutter in an otherwise perfect aesthetic. The clatter of forks and murmurs of post-video chatter filled the air. I rose without a word, left the table, and found the hallway bathroom. Locked myself into the last stall. I slid onto the closed seat, pulled out my wallet, and opened the flap behind the credit cards. A creased Polaroid slipped into my palm. Thatcher, age 8, frosting on his cheek, holding a misshapen cake that read, "World's Best Mom." He'd made that himself. I still remembered the smell of burnt chocolate and the crack in the eggshells he forgot to remove. That moment wasn't staged. No filter, no crop. Just him and me and a cake that needed no caption. "You can't erase this," I whispered, fingers curled tight around the photo. "Not unless you rewrite time." And yet they'd tried. Back at my table, my wine glass was untouched. I'd paid for half the night's bar tab, but apparently that hadn't earned me a sip worth enjoying. I picked it up, took a small taste, and placed it back down. I started counting. Every catering deposit, every linen rental, the down payment on the venue, technically in my name. The dress alteration check I'd written last minute, just to help. I tallied silently in my head as the music started again. Thousands. Tens of thousands. I carried him through pneumonia at 2, first heartbreak at 16, college applications at 18. I paid the security deposit on his first apartment, helped him co-sign the loan when his credit didn't hold up. And now, I wasn't even a footnote in the fairy tale they'd constructed. I scrolled past the thank you video once more, paused it at the final frame, Valora and Thatcher with her family, all teeth and polish. I opened a new tab, drafted an email, subject, request, property review, 1287 Pine Grove. Message, "Hi, I'd like to revisit the deed transfer from last March. Something feels off." My finger hovered over send. Then I pressed it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was too upset. That storm had passed. What remained was still, unmoving, like the calm after an accident when no one's sure what's broken yet. The morning light slipped through the blinds in angled slats, casting soft shadows across the floor of my apartment. I stepped out of my shoes, setting them side by side at the door. One heel wobbled slightly and tipped inward. I looked at it for a long time before muttering, "Even shoes need balance to stand." I dropped my purse on the kitchen table, made a cup of tea I didn't drink, and sat with the hum of the fridge as my only company. There were unopened envelopes in the mail stack. One was from the county assessor's office. Boring stuff, I thought. I slid it open without much care, until I saw the addressee. Valora Coleman. I blinked, checked the envelope again. My address. My second property. The one I'd used as collateral for the wedding venue. But her name was on it, not mine. The air stilled. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the county property database, typed the parcel number, clicked through the search. There it was. Coleman Thatcher Family Trust. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My name, erased. Legally, efficiently. Like a mistake corrected with whiteout. I reached for my tea, still untouched. I dumped it out. The shame I felt wasn't loud. It was surgical. I remembered the server at the wedding, the young man in a black vest, who handed me an envelope near the reception bar and said, "This must be for Mrs. Catering's guest." I'd laughed politely then, assuming he'd confused me with staff. Now, that moment played back differently. Of course my name hadn't been on the seating chart. Of course he didn't know who I was. Why would he? I was never officially listed. And yet, I paid for the house, the venue, the linens, the flowers, the deposit, the damn champagne. I replayed Valora's speech in my mind, the way she had thanked her father for the venue, as though he had hand-carried the entire wedding on his back. He hadn't even chipped in for the napkins. That house was paid for with my late husband's life insurance, years of sacrifice and frugal living, money that should have secured my retirement. Instead, I got a returned heirloom. I reached into my purse and pulled out the cream envelope I'd tucked there before leaving the venue. It had been slipped back to me quietly, sometime between the first dance and the cake cutting. Inside was the porcelain teacup I had gifted Valora, a delicate piece from my mother's china set, hand-painted, kept wrapped in linen for decades. Valora had once admired it. I thought it might be a peace offering, a welcome, but it had come back, along with a folded card that read, "Doesn't match our aesthetic." I read the words again. Not out loud, not bitterly, just clearly. Then I folded the note and slid it back into the envelope. I stood and moved to the filing cabinet, where I kept every document that mattered. Tax forms, insurance policies, property deeds. I pulled out the latest transfer form and laid it beside the assessor's mailing. They didn't match. Signatures weren't aligned. Something was off. Very off. I called Margaret, my old friend, who had worked in probate law for 2 decades. She picked up after the second ring. "Ardelia, everything okay?" "No, but it will be," I said calmly. "I need to review a deed transfer. Something's wrong." "Wrong as in illegal?" "Wrong as in, I'm about to remind them who paid for their illusion." I ended the call and began marking every discrepancy in red pen, line by line, carefully, quietly. There would be no tantrums, no threats, no shouting. That wasn't my way. I didn't need to scream to be heard. "Let me show you what does," I said softly, holding the returned envelope in both hands. The envelope sat sealed on my kitchen table for 2 days. Heavy, thick stock paper, hand-addressed, no return label. It didn't need one. The handwriting was mine. Inside was a typed invoice, 3 pages long, each itemized line perfectly documented. Venue deposit, custom linens, caterer's down payment, the florist, the band, the security, the tip envelopes I stuffed with 20s the night before the wedding, because Valora didn't believe in cash. And at the bottom, one note in blue ink. Since I was removed from the portrait, I assumed this was not a family event. Here's the bill. I placed a copy of the property deed behind it. Not the new version, the one with Coleman Thatcher Family Trust etched into legal record. This was the original deed, with my name on it. The one I signed 15 years ago, alone, when my hands were still steady and my signature still carried weight. I didn't send an email, didn't call. This wasn't a conversation, it was documentation. I paid extra for a courier, first class, signature required, and tracked the package all the way to the Four Seasons Resort, where they were honeymooning in Maui. I knew exactly where they were staying. I'd paid for that too. Then I went about my day. I made chicken soup with too much dill and trimmed the basil on my balcony. I did the laundry, cleaned out the fridge. There was something restorative about folding towels when you've just mailed someone a reckoning. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. "Hey, Mom, it's me. It's Thatcher. We got your package and I'm just wondering, was this really necessary?" I thought we were past all this? Anyway, maybe we can talk. I didn't press play beyond that. Just tapped delete and put my phone back in the drawer. Past all this. As if this had been a disagreement over dinner reservations. As if they hadn't gutted me with smiles and photo edits. The next morning, I stood by the window, mug in hand, watching the morning light stretch across the rooftops. My email pinged with a confirmation. Package received. Signed by V. Coleman. A small smile pulled at my mouth. Of course, Valora signed for it. She always liked control. That same morning, at precisely 9:13 a.m., Hawaii time, the front desk at the resort delivered a second envelope, this one from my lawyer. Inside was a notarized notice of intent to reclaim the Pine Grove property, citing illegal transfer, document inconsistency, and lack of disclosure. My attorney had included a highlighted clause from the original will, naming me sole beneficiary. And there, folded neatly behind it, was my handwritten letter. You used my name to fund your image. I'm taking it back. According to Margaret, the hotel concierge handed it to them at breakfast, just as the server poured champagne, in full view of at least 2 tables of honeymooners, one of whom posted a photo of Valora's expression to a travel blog by noon. I didn't seek that out. It found me. A friend forwarded it. No caption. Just a photo of her face mid-read, tight, rigid, exposed. She wanted a clean slate. I gave her a clean bill. Yeah, that was your first mistake. I said it out loud as I turned off my phone and folded the dish towel over the oven handle. The morning light streamed into the kitchen, golden and too gentle for the war that had just begun. I didn't need the screen to see the message again. Thatcher's text had already branded itself into my mind. We need to talk. You went too far. Too far? I read it once, maybe twice, then silenced my notifications. No reply. No explanation. Instead, I cracked 3 eggs into a ceramic bowl and started baking. They think silence means surrender. That quiet means I've given up, crawled away. But I've just been waiting for my timer. By mid-morning, the gossip had traveled faster than the scent of muffins rising in my oven. Margaret called, her voice half whisper, half thrill. You'll never believe what I heard from a friend who works the front desk at their resort. I already knew. But I let her say it. Valora lost it, apparently threw the whole envelope across the brunch table, called Thatcher a coward, accused him of not handling you better. Loud enough for half the honeymoon wing to hear. Did they get the point? I asked, removing the tray from the oven with practiced calm. They got more than that, she said. Words getting around. Some guests are saying you funded the wedding, that you were ghosted. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slid the muffins onto a cooling rack and breathed in the cinnamon. Later that day, Thatcher made his next move. Online, of course. A photo posted to his profile. Valora's mother seated next to him at a garden table, napkin folded delicately in her lap, hand on his shoulder. His caption, grateful for the women who shaped me. No mention of me, not even a tag. They gave my chair to a guest actress in the play of my life. I didn't comment, didn't share. Just saved the photo in a folder titled Evidence. That evening, I pulled out a fresh sheet of letterhead and wrote slowly, carefully, to whom it may concern, as the rightful owner of the Pine Grove property, I am notifying you that my legal counsel is proceeding with full reclamation of said property. This action is being taken due to unauthorized transfer and fraudulent misuse of assets. I expect cooperation and discretion in the transition. There is a difference between being forgotten and being erased. I accept neither. Respectfully, Ardelia Moore. I sealed the envelope with a steady hand and mailed it at dawn. I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't pace the kitchen or revisit old photos for comfort. I simply lived. At 2:12 that afternoon, I opened my email and saw a message with no subject line. Just a single sentence in preview. We didn't think you'd fight back. I opened it, read it once, and smiled faintly. Not because it was satisfying, but because it was so predictable. They had underestimated me from the start, treated my silence as permission, my giving as obligation. That, I murmured to myself, closing the laptop with a soft click, was your first mistake. The invitation came tucked inside a glossy envelope with gold trim. The front read, "An evening of celebration, hosted by Thatcher and Valora." No salutation, no mother of the groom. Just my name, printed plainly in block letters, Ardelia Moore. I considered tossing it into the recycling bin, unread. But curiosity, like muscle memory, pulled stronger than pride. A week after the honeymoon, I arrived at the venue they'd chosen, different from the wedding. This one smaller, more local, a garden reception tucked behind an old estate in Santa Barbara. I dressed conservatively. Navy dress, pearl studs, hair pulled back the way Thatcher always said made me look too formal. I didn't dress for them. I dressed to be undeniable. The valet smiled politely. Inside, the chatter buzzed like low static, and soft jazz floated from the corner near the tent's open canopy. I scanned the seating chart near the entrance, elegantly handwritten place cards under a glass sheet. I found my name. It was at the bottom corner, near the service table, not at the family table. And there it was. My title, reassigned. Mother of the Groom was printed beneath another name, Janice Harmon. His stepmother, the woman who came into his life when he was already 24. A woman he never called Mom, not even in jest. A hostess in black approached with a practiced smile. "Ms. Moore, we've saved your seat just over here, next to the bar staff, but it's got a lovely breeze." I followed without speaking. The table had a decent view of the flower arrangements, but from where I sat, I couldn't see the podium, or the head table. I didn't eat much. The food was forgettable, chicken breast and overcooked risotto. But that wasn't what hollowed me out. It was watching Valora's mother take photos with guests, beaming like she was the matriarch of something sacred. It was seeing Janice hold Thatcher's elbow and laugh too loud at things he never used to find funny. And then came the microphone. Thatcher stood at the front, a glass raised. "We're just so grateful tonight," he began. "Not just for this beautiful evening, but for the people who shaped us." I felt my body stiffen. He continued, "To Valora's mom, your love has been constant, unwavering. You've made Valora the woman I adore." Applause. "And to Janice, your grace and guidance helped me become the man I am today." More applause. Louder. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. I stared down at my untouched glass of water. Each word chipped away at something. Not rage, not heartbreak, just the thudding realization that I had become a shadow in the story I helped author. He never said my name, not once. I stood up quietly before dessert. No scene, no tearful exit. I simply pushed back my chair and walked out into the cool evening air. I didn't look back. At home, I slipped off my heels, turned on the lamp beside the couch, and opened my journal. I wrote down the date, the time, the exact quote. I drew a diagram of the seating chart from memory, circling where I sat. Then I taped in the program from the event and clipped a printed screenshot of Thatcher's post from earlier that day. The caption read, "Grateful for the women who shaped me. No mention of me. Again." I picked up the phone and called Margaret. "It's time," I said. "Accelerate the process. No more restraint." The next morning, I drafted a letter. Not to my lawyer, not to the courts, to Thatcher. I sealed it in a plain white envelope. No return address, no threats. Inside it simply read, "Let's see who really built the legacy you're sitting on." The envelope came on a Thursday morning, slid beneath my door, with the quiet confidence only legal mail carries. I recognized the firm's seal immediately. Margaret's team didn't waste time. I opened it slowly, pressing each fold flat. Inside was a single sentence from her assistant. "Your claim to the Pine Grove property is validated. Reclamation and restitution paperwork prepared. Your call." No exclamation point, no smiley face, just clarity. I circled one word in red ink, both. By lunchtime, both sets of documents had been filed. One to reclaim full ownership of the house they tried to erase me from. The other, an invoice detailing 5 years of unlawful rental income skimmed from a trust they had no right to form. I ate a quiet sandwich in front of my laptop, then opened a folder labeled Video Dad. I'd saved it years ago, after Thatcher's father had asked to record something for his son's graduation. But the speech had never made it to the party. He sent it to me instead, drunk on guilt and too late for forgiveness. "I know she raised him," he had said into the shaky frame. "I know I didn't. If he forgets her, that's on me too." I watched it once, then again. Then I attached it to a new email. To ValoraColemanMedia.com. Subject: in case you ever wonder who really raised him. No message in the body, just the file. I hit send and didn't flinch. That afternoon, I walked to the corner market to buy tomatoes. A neighbor I hadn't seen in years, Mary Ellen, stopped me by the peaches. "Ardelia?" She blinked. I thought you were gone. They never talk about you. It's like you vanished." I smiled, not kindly, but not cruelly either. "I'm back where I belong," I said. "I never left. They just stopped looking." That evening, as the sun slipped low behind the rooftops, I posted one photo to my barely used Facebook page. Me, standing in front of the Pine Grove house, deed in hand, wind catching my blouse just enough to lift it like a flag. The caption read, "Sometimes the cleanest cuts are the ones they never saw coming." Within an hour, the post had been shared 17 times. Messages trickled in: mothers, daughters, sisters, even strangers. "This happened to me too. I wish I'd done what you did. How did you stay so calm?" The next day, I received a call from a local podcast host. She wanted to interview me. "You're inspiring women," she said. "You made a point without yelling." I declined politely. This wasn't a campaign. This was a reckoning. That weekend, a letter arrived. The return address was blurred from rain, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Thatcher. I didn't open it. I placed it on my desk beside my journal and wrote instead. "He never called me Mom in his speech. I don't need him to call now." I closed the book, turned out the light, and sat in the stillness. The kind that doesn't ache, but listens. 2 months passed. Spring had found its way back to Santa Barbara, settling soft and steady like a promise finally kept. I stood on the porch of the Pine Grove house, watering the lavender I'd planted along the edge of the walkway. The scent was stronger in the morning, blooming into the air like memory. The paint had dried. The fence was repaired. The wind chime I'd rehung near the kitchen window danced each afternoon with the ocean breeze. My name was back on the deed. But more importantly, it was back on people's tongues. Neighbors greeted me by name again, not in passing, not like I was someone who once lived here, but as if I had never left, as if I had always belonged. I spent most days tending the garden, writing in the mornings, and making tea by 5. Some evenings I'd walk to the post office, mostly for the motion. That's where I stopped by the market one evening and found myself digging through an old cedar box I hadn't opened in years. Inside, tucked between faded recipe cards and ticket stubs, was a letter. The paper had yellowed slightly, and the handwriting leaned too far to the right, like it had been written in a hurry. "To Mom, one day I'll make you proud." Thatcher's name, clumsily printed in pencil, followed with a backwards R. He was 12 when he wrote it. We'd just come back from a science fair where he won second place. He cried on the ride home, embarrassed that it wasn't first. I told him he'd already made me proud, and he scribbled that note during dinner without me seeing. I hadn't read it in over a decade. Now I did, twice. Slowly, letting every curve of his young handwriting soak into me. He meant it once. That's enough for me now. There had been no lawsuits, no counterclaims, not even a formal apology, just silence. I'd heard from Margaret that the Colemans were struggling to refinance their downtown condo. Their GoFundMe link vanished a week after it launched. No fanfare, no traction. I didn't gloat. I didn't refresh the page. I simply let them feel what I had felt. The weight of absence. The stories that go untold. I wrote one last thing. Not to Thatcher. Not to Valora. Just a blog post. Anonymous. Titled, What It Means to Be Cropped Out. In it, I wrote not about weddings or property deeds or betrayal. I wrote about the feeling of sitting 3 feet away from people who called themselves family and realizing they didn't see you, about the silence that follows being erased, and about the power of deciding you deserve to be visible, even when no one else hands you the spotlight. I didn't expect much, but within a day, the post had over 1,000 shares. Comments from strangers poured in. This is my story too. Thank you for saying it out loud. I didn't even realize I needed to read this. I didn't reply to any of them. I just closed my laptop and smiled at the quiet. I had said enough. The silence could carry the rest. A week later, another letter arrived. No return address. The handwriting was familiar, curved in the same way Thatcher's had been on that old birthday card from years back. I didn't open it. I slipped it into the cedar box, beside the 12-year-old promise. I didn't need to read what wasn't said. Some wounds don't close, but they no longer bleed. And that, I've learned, is more than enough. Looking back, I don't regret the silence. I don't regret walking away. What I've learned, perhaps too late for some, is that love should never come with conditions, and dignity should never be negotiable. You can give your life to people, raise them, build their world brick by brick. But if they choose to forget, it doesn't make your love any less real. It just means it's time to remember yourself. Maybe you've been left out of the picture too. Maybe someone cropped you from their version of the story. If so, I want you to hear this. You still matter. Your worth isn't measured by where you sit at someone else's table, but by how you choose to stand. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? What did you do about it? Leave a comment, type 1, if this story touched something in you, or tell me where you're watching from. If this didn't speak to you, I'd still love to know why. What's your version of the truth? And if this video moved you, inspired you, or simply made you pause for a moment, subscribe to the channel. We've got more stories coming, and I'd be honored to have you here for the next one.